I spent my entire life giving, offering my love, my time, my money, my very soul. But one evening, at a dinner I wasn't even meant to attend, something was said that shattered me in a way I never imagined possible. This isn't just a story about humiliation. This is a story about awakening. If you've ever felt unseen in your own home, this one's for you. Make sure to subscribe, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too. I still remember everything about that night. The clinking of crystal glasses, the soft jazz echoing through the house I paid for, the aroma of roast chicken I had seasoned and slow cooked, all while running last-minute errands to make sure everything was perfect. Again, Olivia hadn't even told me her parents were visiting. I only found out when I saw the table set for 6 instead of 3. I should have left the moment I realized. But I didn't. I stood by the dining table, holding the wine bottle I'd brought up from the cellar. That's when her mother looked at me with those curious, condescending eyes and asked, "And you are?" Without missing a beat, Olivia laughed, like it was some inside joke. "Oh, that's Margaret," she said. "Our unofficial maid. Keeps everything running around here." Everyone laughed, even my son. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't want them to see me fall apart. My heart was cracking, piece by piece, and not one of them noticed. No one said a word in my defense. Not Olivia. Not her parents. Not even Ethan, my own son. I quietly placed the bottle on the counter, walked down the hall, and locked myself in my room. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the door I'd painted myself when we first moved in. I remembered the day I signed those mortgage papers, my name, my credit, my savings. Ethan had just graduated. Olivia wasn't even in the picture. I had built that home from nothing, for them. And now, I was the help. The next morning, I did what I always did. Made coffee. Fed the cat Olivia only pretended to care about. She came downstairs in her yoga outfit, phone glued to her hand, not even bothering to look up, until I stood directly in front of her and handed her a set of keys. "All of them," I said. She frowned. "What's this?" I smiled, calmly. "Good luck paying the mortgage now." She blinked in confusion. "Wait, what?" I didn't answer. I simply walked past her, past the framed photos I hung, the furniture I chose, the walls I painted. I didn't take anything. Just my purse. And the coat I wore the day I brought Ethan home from the hospital. I didn't even say goodbye. I heard Ethan call my name from behind. I heard the panic in his voice as he ran barefoot into the driveway. But I didn't turn back. I didn't slam the car door. I closed it gently. Because something inside me had broken, not with rage or sadness, but with clarity. And clarity is the quietest thing in the world. It doesn't shout. It doesn't plead. It simply knows. And I knew, for the first time, that I was done. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew exactly where I wasn't staying. In the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan standing frozen in the driveway. He had no idea what he'd just lost. Neither did I. They say you don't realize you were drowning until you finally breathe. That first night, in the tiny apartment my great-aunt Rutha left me, didn't feel like freedom. Not yet. It felt like silence. Heavy, echoing silence that settled in like dust. The apartment smelled of old wood and time. The heater groaned like it remembered better years. I dropped my bag on the chipped kitchen counter and stood there. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just stood, staring at nothing, remembering everything. Over the next few days, I moved like a ghost. I slept on the couch because the bed frame was broken. I ate soup from a can. I didn't call anyone, not because I had no one, but because no one had called me. Ethan didn't text. He didn't check in. Not once. Maybe Olivia told him not to. Or maybe, worse, maybe he just didn't care. I kept thinking about that dinner. About how they laughed. About how he laughed. I raised that boy on my own. I gave up my dreams, my career, my identity. For him. And in the end, I was the maid. I scrubbed motel floors under flickering lights at night. And stocked grocery shelves before dawn just to keep a roof over our heads. I never complained. Not when I lost my parents. Not when I used every cent of their insurance to buy a house, to build a home. And when I took him in, I asked for nothing. No rent. No thank you. Just family. But somehow, in Olivia's twisted retelling, I'd become a help in my own home. At night, when the world went quiet, I started writing. Old spiral notebooks, the kind I used to buy for Ethan in middle school, became my secret outlet. I wrote things I never dared to say aloud, about the nights I stood in the kitchen waiting for a thank you that never came. About the tears I wiped in the garage while they laughed over dinners I was never invited to. About how I used to fake sleep, just to avoid hearing them mock my favorite shows in a living room I paid for. Then, one rainy afternoon, while searching for a light bulb in the upstairs storage closet, I found it. A rusted old trunk Ruth used to keep under her sewing machine. It was heavier than I remembered. My hands trembled as I forced it open, expecting needles, buttons, maybe a few faded fabric scraps. But inside were envelopes, dozens of them. Yellowed. Fragile. And one stood out. It was addressed to me, in Ruth's unmistakable handwriting. Dated nearly 30 years ago. If you're reading this, it means you've come back. And I'm sorry you had to. I unfolded the letter. My heart thundered in my chest. Attached were hospital forms, notes, and a photograph of a newborn swaddled in a hospital blanket. But it wasn't Ethan. There was a name scribbled beneath the photo. Michael Jameson. I read Ruth's letter 3 times before the truth sank in. She had been a nurse at the hospital where I gave birth. She wrote of a mix-up that night, a last-minute room change, switched baby tags. She said she'd noticed something odd. But when she spoke up, it was already too late. The babies had gone home. She'd kept quiet, out of fear and guilt. Years later, buried deep in her files, Ruth found a quiet settlement agreement, the hospital paying another family to stay silent. That's when she knew. Ethan wasn't my son. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the photo again. Michael Jameson. The name echoed through my mind like a forgotten melody. If Ethan wasn't mine, who was I to him? And where was my real son? And yet, the strangest thing happened. I didn't feel rage. I didn't even cry. I felt free. Because finally, after all the years of silence, of never quite fitting, of aching for connection that never came, it made sense. Maybe that coldness Ethan always showed me wasn't imagined. Maybe he felt it too. I stayed up all night, reading everything in that trunk. Ruth had kept everything. DNA reports, signed affidavits, even a small article about the Jameson family, well-educated, respected, still living in the same town. My son had been here all this time, just a few miles away. The next morning, I placed the letters in a new envelope and tucked them gently into my nightstand. Then I looked in the mirror. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel ashamed of the woman looking back. She was worn, weathered. But she was waking up. And the world had no idea what that meant yet. But silence has a strange weight. Not peaceful. Punishing. And that's what I lived in, for weeks. I didn't tell Ethan. I didn't search for Michael. I just existed. 1 cup of coffee. 1 fogged window. Every day. Who was I without the title of mother? Without the years I gave so willingly? Then one evening, the heater failed in my apartment. I wrapped myself in blankets, a single candle flickering beside me. And in my lap the truth. I read the documents again. Every name. Every date. Every signature. It all lined up. It was real. My son, Michael Jameson, was born the same night as Ethan. In the same hospital. Just down the hallway. And somewhere out there, he's still here. Living a life meant for someone else. While I have lived a life built on a lie. But not anymore. Ruth didn't leave just memories, she left evidence. Proof of the truth that had been carefully hidden from me, stolen under the guise of love and lies. Before she passed, she made copies of everything. Every document. Every secret. Every piece of my shattered past. At first, I grieved. But not for Ethan. No, the ache went deeper. I mourned the years I lost, the scraped knees I never kissed, the birthdays I never planned, the bedtime stories I never got to read. I thought I was living for my child. But it turns out, I was raising someone else's. Strangely, I didn't feel hatred. Not even for Ethan. My love for him wasn't forged in biology, it was unconditional. Or at least, I believed it was. But when the person you devoted your life to refuses to see you, to stand by you, it cracks something inside. Makes you question your very identity. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon when I decided to stop hiding. I wasn't ready to face Ethan. But I had to start somewhere. Somewhere quiet. That's when I found it. Jameson's books. Nestled on the corner of Main and Elm. Green painted brick, hand-lettered windows. A place I had walked by 100 times and never noticed. But this time, he was there. Michael. I didn't need confirmation. I knew. The way he moved, the way he helped a customer find a poetry book, calm, kind, grounded. He looked about 30. Clean-cut. Gentle. He smiled the way I used to smile when reading bedtime stories. I stood across the street and watched. My heart pounded. My throat closed. And tears rolled down silently as I stared at the son I never knew I had. I didn't go in. Not that day. The next day, I returned. Then again. And again. It became a quiet ritual. A silent vigil. I'd sit on the bench across the street, pretending to sip coffee or scroll my phone, but all the while, I was watching. Learning. It wasn't stalking. It was mourning. But also preparing. And slowly, a new clarity emerged. I started to see things, not just Michael, but them. Ethan and Olivia. I knew their habits by heart. Olivia's public posts made it too easy. She tagged every boutique brunch, every studio, every wine night. And Ethan? He had quit his job 6 months ago. They called it manifesting a new chapter. I called it a delusion wrapped in denial. They were building a fragile illusion, rented offices, leased lifestyles, curated lies. And they had no idea the truth was unraveling beneath them. So I started keeping a second journal. Not of feelings, but of facts. Names. Dates. Business filings. Invoices. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was investigating. They thought I was invisible. Erased. But I was more present than ever. Then, one rainy Thursday, it happened. Michael and I made eye contact. Just for a second. He was inside, restocking books. He looked up, through the foggy glass. Our eyes met. He smiled. Just politely. The kind of smile you offer a stranger. Because that's what I was. A stranger. My breath caught. I turned quickly, pretending to check my phone. But my hands shook too hard to fake it. I fled before the tears came again. How do you tell someone that their entire life began with a mistake? How do you explain that everything they thought they knew was borrowed? I went home and reread Ruth's letter. Again. 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 She hadn't stumbled onto this truth, she had uncovered it methodically. The name Michael Jameson wasn't a theory. It was confirmed, documented. The hospital never told me. I was never meant to know. But Ruth made sure I did. And the Jamesons? Maybe they didn't know everything. But they knew enough to accept the settlement. Enough to stay quiet. But I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to know him. To see if that empty space in my heart could finally be filled. So I went back. I walked in. I bought a book. Michael rang it up himself. Good choice, he said, smiling. Hard to find these days. His voice, warm, sincere, tugged at something deep in me. He handed me the bag. Our fingers brushed. You own this place? I asked, my voice barely steady. Sort of, he said, that same calm smile returning. And just like that, the first real moment began. Not an ending, but a beginning I never saw coming. I gave everything. Love. Time. Money. Myself. Until one evening, surrounded by food I had cooked in a house I had paid for, I heard words that shattered me in silence. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of awakening. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever wondered how much more you could give before you disappeared completely, this is for you. Make sure to subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I want to hear your story too. I remember the clink of crystal glasses. The jazz music humming in the background. The roast chicken I had seasoned at dawn. I had run errands all day for a dinner I wasn't even invited to, but stayed, because Olivia forgot to mention her parents were coming over. Again, her mother's eyes swept over me, half curious, half condescending. Then she asked, "And you are?" Olivia didn't hesitate. "Oh," she laughed, "that's Margaret. Our unofficial maid, keeps the house running." Everyone laughed, even my son. I stood there holding the wine bottle I had fetched from the basement, like a servant, like a stranger. I smiled politely, pretending my heart wasn't collapsing inside me. I set the bottle down, walked slowly to my room, and shut the door. Not one of them stopped me. Not even Ethan. Not my son. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't sleep. I stared at the door I had painted with my own hands, remembering when I first moved into that house. My name was on the deed. My down payment. My sacrifice. Ethan had nothing. Olivia wasn't even in his life yet. But now, they laughed at me like I was the help. The next morning, I made coffee. Fed the cat. Waited. Olivia came downstairs in her designer yoga outfit, glued to her phone. I handed her a ring of keys. She blinked. "What's this?" "Good luck paying the mortgage now," I said. I walked past her. Past the photos I'd framed. Past the furniture I'd picked. I didn't pack. I didn't cry. I left with my purse and the coat I wore when I brought Ethan home from the hospital. He called after me, barefoot in the driveway. I didn't stop. I didn't slam the car door. I closed it softly, because what I felt wasn't rage. It was clarity. Clarity doesn't scream. It whispers. It knows. And I knew, I was done. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew where I wasn't staying. That night, I slept in a dusty apartment left to me by my great-aunt Ruth. The silence wasn't comforting, it was deafening. The apartment smelled like time. The heater moaned, the floor creaked like old bones. And yet, in the quiet, I began to breathe again. Over the next few days, I lived like a ghost. Soup from a microwave. A broken bed frame. No calls. No texts. Until one finally came. "Mom. Are you okay?" 3 weeks of silence. That's what I got. I didn't reply, but I did start digging. The house? Still in my name. Olivia had tried to refinance, denied. They couldn't afford the payments. I could have evicted them. But no. I wanted them to feel the cracks, the fear, the slow unraveling. So I watched. And I wrote. Every detail, documented. Every receipt. Every interaction. Every truth. Meanwhile, I kept going to the bookstore. Casual. Quiet. That's where I met Michael. He always smiled. Always noticed me. We talked about books. Coffee. Rain. He didn't know my name. Not yet. But he treated me with more warmth in a single conversation than Ethan had in years. One night, I stared at old hospital files again. The truth: Michael and Ethan had been switched at birth. Ethan was never mine. Michael was. And somehow, I had found him. He didn't know who I was, but he knew me. "You remind me of someone," he once said. "Someone I can't place." "Maybe a librarian," I joked. He smiled. Maybe. I saw myself in him. In his stillness. In the kindness in his voice. I dreamed of another life, one I was meant to live. Back in their world, things were falling apart. Olivia's so-called business? A hollow shell. Fake clients. Mounting debt. Ethan's student loans, unpaid. Every glamorous post they shared was a mask covering a crumbling life. I could end it all with one phone call. But first, I had one more thing to do. I kept visiting Michael. And when the time comes, I'll tell him everything. About the switch. The truth. The life that was taken from us both. I never meant to become invisible in my own story. But sometimes, the only way to truly see, is to step out of the light. And now, I'm watching the house I built fall without lifting a finger. Because this time, I'm choosing me. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. Not for revenge. For justice. Because after everything, I wasn't going to disappear quietly. That house? I had every legal right to it. I made the down payment. I paid the bills. But Ethan always said, "We'll put it in your name later." Later never came. Because for him, there was no urgency. I was the one footing the bill. Now? I wanted what was mine. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. So I met with an attorney downtown. She was sharp. Focused. Around my age, and more importantly, she listened. When I finished telling her everything, she looked at me and simply said, "We'll file the motion this week." That evening, I walked past the house. My house. The porch light was on. Olivia sat on the swing, scrolling through her phone, wine in hand. Inside, Ethan lounged on the couch, lost in his video games. Their world felt untouched, undisturbed. They had no idea the ground beneath them was already cracking. This wasn't about destroying them. It was about restoring something long buried, my power. Because when the house sells, they'll finally understand the silence I lived in for years. Maybe then, they'll know what it feels like to be discarded. I didn't scream. I didn't slam doors. I just watched, waited, and walked away. The first domino had fallen, and they hadn't even noticed. I've always believed silence is stronger than noise. That real strength doesn't need to shout, it just needs to know it's right. The day the official notice went out, I sat in a cafe near the courthouse, stirring honey into my tea with the calm of someone finally letting go. My phone buzzed. Ethan. I watched it ring, then flipped it over. I wasn't ready to hear lies wrapped in apologies. Later, I checked my email. A message. "Mom, what are you doing? Please call me. Olivia is freaking out." Of course she was. The mortgage was due, refinancing was impossible, and suddenly the woman they'd overlooked held all the cards. They never saw it coming. A week later, Olivia called. I didn't pick up. Her voicemail was tight, controlled, desperate. "Margaret, we need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Ethan says you're going through something, and we're here to support you. But you're putting our lives at risk." She called the house hers. And with that, my silence grew colder, sharper, more deliberate. 2 days later, Ethan came to my door. I watched him through the peephole, unshaven, tired, unraveling. He knocked. Softly. Then again. "Mom, please don't do this." I stood on the other side, my hand resting on the doorknob. But I didn't turn it. I let him sit in the silence he'd once given me. By the next week, the paperwork was finalized. The house was going on the market. Every cent, legally, ethically, emotionally, was mine. Olivia tried to contest it. She claimed she had added value. My lawyer just smiled, let her prove it in court. She couldn't. She never invested in anything but appearances. And those were crumbling, one filter at a time. Whispers started. Olivia's parents stopped liking her posts. Clients pulled away. She made a video, trying to frame it as unfair generational laws. But people saw through it. I didn't post a word. I didn't need to. I just kept showing up at Michael's bookstore. Coffee. Quiet conversation. A book recommendation. It's about grief, he said, but also forgiveness. I nodded, barely holding back tears. Maybe I'd like it, I replied. But I wasn't done grieving yet. Or forgiving. At home, I began packing away old photos. Baby pictures. School portraits. Birthday parties where I did all the work and none of the celebrating. And with every box, every folded memory, I reclaimed what they tried to erase. Not just the house. I didn't throw the papers away. I tucked them into the drawer and closed it gently, because the woman who once gave everything had vanished. And the one who replaced her? She wasn't bitter. She was awake. The documents were signed. The house, the one I fought so hard to hold on to, was going on the market. And across town, in a small green bookstore, my real son laughed at something a customer said, completely unaware that his entire world was about to shift. But not in the way you'd expect. Because not all endings are tragedies. Some are beginnings in disguise. I used to think masks were just for costume parties. But Olivia? She wore hers like it was stitched to her skin, polished, perfect, always camera ready. She knew her angles, her tone, her timing. But masks have limits. And I was about to crack hers wide open. It started on a quiet morning. A casual scroll through the local business directory sparked an idea. I already had whispers, debt, bounced checks, phony brand deals, but I didn't want whispers. I wanted evidence. So I hired someone. Darren. Private, calm, professional. A local business consultant who asked no questions. I told him I needed a discreet audit, not illegal, just a deep look inside a business. Her business, Olivia Sens LLC. He nodded. He got to work. And what he returned with, in a neat black folder, nearly took my breath away. It was all smoke and mirrors. No tax filings for 2 quarters. Forged invoices from imaginary clients. Photo shoots staged at Airbnb rentals, passed off as luxury renovations. Her brand partnerships? Inflated affiliate links with fake metrics. She hadn't just embellished her success, she'd manufactured it from nothing. I stared at the pages. The fraud, the lies, the performance. Would this survive scrutiny? I asked. Darren didn't flinch. If this goes public, she's finished. That's when I made my move. I printed everything. Clean copies. No fingerprints. Then I mailed them, anonymously, to the people who once raised glasses in my kitchen, toasting their daughter as I stood quietly in the background. Olivia's parents. No return address. No explanation. Just a single note clipped to the top. Everything you think you know is a performance. 2 days later, the first cracks formed. Her Instagram? Silent. No polished reels, no morning matcha routines. Her latest post, some quote about being misunderstood, was met with a flood of cryptic comments. Then the dominoes began to fall. Website down for maintenance. Her next workshop cancelled. Rumors swirled, fast and sharp. And the final blow? An old neighbor texted me. You won't believe this. Olivia's mom stormed out of her house screaming. She looked furious. Whatever happened, it's ugly. I didn't gloat. But I didn't stop it either. That night, Ethan called. Voicemail. Mom. I don't know what's happening. Olivia's parents aren't speaking to us. Someone sent them something. Documents. They think we faked them. Did you do this? I didn't respond. He was finally seeing Olivia. Seeing himself. Seeing the wreckage they'd left behind. Let him sit with it. I needed no apology. Later that evening, I wandered into the bookstore again. Michael was locking up. He smiled when he saw me. Back again? He said, unlocking the door. You really should just work here. I laughed softly. Maybe I should. We sat on the floor, surrounded by towers of paperbacks. He was cataloging a shipment, and I helped, without being asked. Then he paused. Why do you come here? His voice was gentle. I looked at him. Really looked. He had my eyes. I hadn't seen it before. Because, I said quietly, I like the way it feels in here. And in that moment, something shifted. Not loud. Not dramatic, but real. Like the first breath after coming up from deep water. Like the quiet between thunderclaps, the silence in that bookstore felt strangely honest, like nothing was pretending to be something it wasn't. Michael tilted his head slightly, studying me. And in that moment, I studied him too. We didn't speak after that. No questions. No small talk. Just a strange kind of stillness between us. But in that quiet, something shifted, something unspoken. Not truth, not yet. But a thread. Fragile. Real. A thread that dared to connect two people who didn't even know they were reaching for each other. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost haunting the edges of someone else's story. I felt seen. The woman who had once stood in her own kitchen, invisible, unheard, she no longer existed. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone they never expected. Someone they never should have underestimated. For the longest time, I thought heartbreak came like a thunderclap, a single, shattering moment that splits the world in two. But it doesn't always come that way. Sometimes it arrives like a slow leak in the roof, barely noticeable. Until the ceiling caves in. And Ethan? He was finally standing beneath the flood. The news had reached him by then. The house, his house, as he used to call it, was officially listed. Olivia's glossy illusion had cracked wide open. Her so-called business, a lifestyle brand held together with credit cards and carefully curated posts, had unraveled. Her reputation? In free fall. And with nowhere else to turn, Ethan did what he always did. He came running. To me. I heard the knock before I saw him, 3 hesitant raps on the door. The kind of knock that doesn't know if it will be welcomed. Or ignored. I opened the door slowly. He looked hollow. Unshaven. His clothes hung on him, rumpled like he'd slept in them, if he'd slept at all. "Mom," he said. His voice cracked. "Can I come in?" I didn't speak. Just stepped aside. He walked in like a man stepping into a memory, unsure if he belonged. He stood in the middle of the living room, arms hanging uselessly, unsure where to sit, where to begin. For a long time, we just sat in the silence. Then he broke it. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, voice tight. "To us?" I almost laughed. Us? As if that had meant anything for years. I leaned back into the chair, calm, grounded. "I'm not doing anything to you, Ethan," I said. "I'm doing something for me." His jaw clenched. "You're selling the house." "My house. I grew up there." I met his eyes, unwavering. "And you let your wife turn me into your housekeeper. You stood by. You laughed. You never once apologized." He looked down, ashamed. "I thought you were just being dramatic. I didn't know it hurt you like that." I stared at him. "That's the problem, Ethan. You never bothered to know. You assumed I'd always be there, paying your bills, scrubbing your floors, fading into the background while Olivia chipped away at who I was." He flinched at her name. "She's not who I thought she was," he muttered. I nodded, cold. "That's not news to me." Finally, he looked up. His eyes were glassy, exhausted. "I've lost everything," he whispered. I didn't blink. "No. You gave it away." The silence between us thickened. "I miss you," he said. I sat straighter. My voice was steady. "I raised you, Ethan. I fed you. Fought for you. Loved you. And you let me be humiliated in the very house I built for you." His lip trembled. "I thought she was helping me. I thought we were building something." "You built a lie," I said. "And now it's coming down around you." He stood, started pacing. "So that's it? You just walk away?" I stood too. Walked to the drawer by the kitchen. Pulled out the envelope Ruth had left me. "I'm going to tell you something," I said. "And I need you to really listen." He stopped pacing. Nodded, uncertain. I handed him the envelope. "These are your birth records. Read them." His hands trembled as he opened it. Pages rustled. His eyes scanned the files, Ruth's letter, the hospital documents, the DNA test she had ordered in secret, so many years ago. His expression changed, furrowed brow, then disbelief. This can't be real," he breathed. "It is," I said. "You're saying I'm not your son?" I stepped closer. "I'm saying I didn't give birth to you. But I raised you like you were mine. Every moment. Every memory. Every sacrifice." He went pale. "So, who is?" I didn't answer. He sat down hard, the envelope clutched in his shaking hands. "I don't know who I am anymore," he whispered. I knelt down in front of him, voice quiet. "Now you know how I felt. For years." He didn't cry. Not at first. But something inside him cracked, finally. And the sound of it wasn't loud. It was devastating. And I saw it happen. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just peace. Because I finally said what needed to be said. I walked him to the door. He turned, eyes pleading. "Can we fix this?" I met his gaze. "I don't know," I said. But it's not my job to try anymore. And I closed the door behind him. Gently. Not with spite, but with finality. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one holding it open. It took me 3 days to decide how I was going to do it. I practiced the conversation everywhere, in front of the mirror, in my car, even in the grocery line with my hand wrapped around a basket of oranges, whispering lines I could barely finish. I'm your mother. There was a mistake. You've lived a life that wasn't meant to be yours. And so have I. But nothing sounded right. Because how do you drop a truth like that into someone's life, and expect them to survive the impact? Still, I had to try. Michael was in the bookstore, as always. The afternoon sun spilled through the windows in golden beams, softening the shelves, scattering shadows across the hardwood floor. It felt sacred, like truth belonged there. When he looked up and smiled, I almost turned and walked away. But I didn't. Hey, he said. You came at the right time. We just got a new batch of rare poetry editions. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Actually, I said. I came to talk. He studied me, sensing something in my voice. Sure. Come on back. He led me through a side door to a tiny break room. A chip table. A kettle on the counter. A mismatched couch. Real life. No filters. We sat. I've been coming here for a reason, I began, twisting my hands. I figured, he said softly. You're not exactly here for the books. I gave a small, sad laugh. No. I'm not. Then I took out the envelope, Ruth's letter, the birth records, the DNA proof, and placed it on the table between us. What's this? He asked, cautious. Something that's going to change everything. He looked at me, waiting. 30 years ago, I said, my voice cracking. There was a mistake at the hospital. 2 babies were switched at birth. His brow furrowed. Confusion bloomed in his expression. My son, I continued, was given to another family. He went very still. And theirs was given to me. Silence. I raised him, I said. I loved him with everything I had. But he didn't love me back. Not really. His eyes searched mine. Slowly, painfully, connecting pieces I didn't dare say aloud. You think I know you are. He looked down at the envelope. Picked it up with trembling hands. Inside were the documents. The timeline. Ruth's confession. He read in silence. Every second stretched into eternity. When he finished, he didn't look at me. Just rested his fingers on the papers like he needed something to hold on to. This is a lot, he finally said. I know. And you're Margaret? Yes. His eyes met mine. Glassy. Disoriented. I don't feel anything. Not yet. You don't have to, I said. I'm not here to ask for a place in your life. I needed you to know. He nodded slowly. Why now? Because I couldn't live with the silence anymore. Because the truth deserved to breathe. He leaned back. Exhaled hard. I have parents. They raised me well. I know. I love them. I would never ask you not to. We sat there, in a room that smelled of peppermint tea and old paper. And I felt something I hadn't in years. Not joy, not closure, but relief. The freedom of no longer carrying something so heavy. Alone. He stood after a while. Paced the room. I don't know what to do with this, he said honestly. I don't either, I whispered. But I don't hate you. Tears filled my eyes. And in that moment, even with a lifetime of silence between us, a thread was stitched. Not a reunion, not a miracle, but maybe a beginning. That's more than I expected, he said. Michael turned to face me again. You didn't have to come. I didn't know how not to, I said softly. He nodded, and something unspoken settled in the quiet between us. Understanding, not forgiveness, not yet, but something close. Can we take it slow? He asked. I don't want to make this something it's not. I wouldn't ask for anything else. He smiled, barely, like it was still learning how. You want to stay for tea? I nodded. I'd love to. That afternoon, we didn't talk about the files. Not once. We talked about books and the weather. How he hated wind chimes but loved the rain. We let the past sit where it was, unopened, still raw, but for the first time, we weren't bleeding from it. This wasn't a reunion. It was a beginning. Not love. Not yet. But something alive. By the time autumn settled in, the leaves weren't the only things changing. The house sold faster than I expected. Full asking price. More than I'd dreamed. Ethan and Olivia had 30 days to leave. No extensions. No favors. It wasn't out of spite. It was necessity. That house had been my prison far too long. Watching them pack their curated lives into boxes, pillows, fake plants, designer vases, it felt like a theater set being torn down. The play was over. I didn't stop the day the truck came. I drove by slowly. From a distance, I saw Olivia snapping orders, sunglasses shielding whatever pride she had left. Ethan paced the lawn, phone glued to his ear. I wondered if he ever imagined this day, if he knew I'd be the one to bring it. There were no explosions, no scandal, no police cars, just collapse. Olivia's parents cut her off. Her sponsors vanished. Her brand became a whisper in grocery store lines and coffee shops. The woman who once mocked me in my own kitchen couldn't afford her overpriced skincare or her daily matcha anymore. Ethan tried to work. He really did. But no degree, no references, no recent experience. He moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. My lawyer told me. I didn't ask, but I also didn't celebrate, because this was never about revenge. It was about truth, and truth always demands consequences. As for me, life began again, quietly. Michael and I kept meeting, coffee, book chats, little slices of life. He asked about my writing once. I've started a memoir, I said. Even if no one ever reads it, I think I need to tell it. You should, he replied. Stories like that matter. He still didn't call me mom. I didn't expect him to. We weren't building from guilt or biology. We were building from choice. And that made all the difference. One Saturday, we strolled the farmer's market. He picked up a jar of apple butter and laughed. My mom used to make this every fall. The way he said my mom, it didn't sting. Not anymore. Because he had a mom. And I had a son who didn't see me until it was too late. Some nights, I still sat with my tea and wondered. Was Ethan sleeping on a mattress or the floor? Did Olivia still wear her silk robes and speak in curated sentences? Did they finally see the cracks? Did they finally see each other? I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of what we were supposed to be. But grief like that is a shadow. It lingers, then fades. And in its place, something else grows: pride. The kind that comes when you learn to love yourself more than you ever craved their approval. Before the final papers closed, I walked my old neighborhood one last time. Not to haunt it, to say goodbye. I passed the school where Ethan once went, the swings I pushed him on, the store where I clipped coupons to buy his favorite cereal. And I let it all go, because I had given everything to a family that never gave back. And now, I was giving to someone who might never call me mother, but who looked at me with kindness, with curiosity, with respect. Sometimes you don't need redemption, you just need peace. And I was finally beginning to feel it. Then, in early November, my phone buzzed. Ethan. Just one line. Can we meet? Just once. I stared at the message for a long time. It had been weeks. Weeks of silence. Weeks of distance that weighed heavier than any argument could. But this text. It wasn't angry. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't accusing. It was something else. And I wasn't sure if I was ready. But I knew. I wasn't afraid. It sounded like surrender. We met at a small park on the edge of town. The kind with rusted benches and a trail that circled a pond long dried up. I chose the place because it was neutral. No memories. No ghosts. He was already there when I arrived, sitting with his hands clasped between his knees. When he looked up, for a second, he reminded me of the boy he used to be, awkward, unsure, waiting for someone to show him how to be whole. I sat down beside him. Not too close. He cleared his throat. I'm not here to ask for anything, he said. I nodded. I didn't speak. I wanted to understand. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope, the one with Ruth's letter, the DNA test, the documents. I handed it to him without a word. He didn't open it. Just held it in his lap like it was something sacred, or something heavy enough to drown in. I did a test of my own, he said. After you told me. Same result. I nodded again. I spent weeks trying to figure out what that made me, he whispered. If I wasn't your son, then what was I? I looked at him. Really looked at him, and said, softly, you were my child. But I treated you the way you treated me. He flinched. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said quickly. I don't deserve it. You don't, I said. But that doesn't mean I hate you. He turned toward me, eyes wet. Then what does it mean? It means, I said, I finally love myself more than I love the idea of you. Silence. He bowed his head. I thought I was protecting Olivia, he muttered. But really, I was hiding behind her. Wasn't I? You let her rewrite the story, I said. And you handed her the pen. He nodded slowly. I wish I could undo it. You can't. We sat like that for a while, two people unraveling a life built on a lie, in the cold November air. Then he said something I didn't expect. I hope he's good to you. I looked at him, startled. Michael, he said. Your son. A breath caught in my throat. He's kind, I said. Gentle. He smiled, faint. Guess some of that came from you. Then we both laughed, softly. Not with joy. But not with bitterness, either. I don't want to be in your life if it hurts you, he said at last. But if there's ever a place for me, even just a corner. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I stood and looked out across the pond. Leaves scattered like ashes across the water's surface. "I'll think about it," I said. He nodded. "That's more than I hoped for." As I turned to leave, I placed my hand on his shoulder, just for a second. And that was it. The final moment. Not closure, but understanding. And for the first time, it was enough. Because I didn't need to fix him anymore. And I didn't need to be fixed either. I just needed to be free. And I was. Truly, finally. I was. For so long, I thought freedom was a word too big for people like me. A word for parades and speeches, not for someone whose life had been folded into the background. But that morning, when I turned the key to Michael's bookstore, I finally understood what it meant. He'd called the night before. Said he had something to show me. When I arrived, he stood by a freshly hung wooden sign above an arched doorway. "The next chapter." I smiled. "What's this?" He handed me a single brass key. Small. Simple. Polished. "It's a new space I'm opening," he said. "Cozy reading area. Coffee corner. Community talks. I want it to be more than just a store. I want it to feel like belonging." I turned the key over in my hand. "And you want me to open it?" He looked at me, serious now. "I want you to have it." I stared at him, speechless. "You gave someone your whole life," he said. "They treated you like furniture. Like background. But I see you. You don't have to prove anything to me. You've already done enough." Tears welled in my eyes. I blinked them back. "You don't have to do this," I whispered. "I know," he said. "But I want to." I walked to the door beneath the sign and slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. Inside, warm light filtered through tall windows. Shelves already half-stocked with stories waiting to be opened. A soft rug in the center. A worn armchair. A tea set waiting to be used. It felt like a dream I forgot I'd ever had. I turned back to him, completely undone. "Michael," he smiled. "Consider it yours. For however long you want it." I stepped into the room and breathed it in. New wood, paper, possibility. That night, I sat in the apartment one last time. Notebook on my lap. Final page still blank. I wrote. "I was a woman who gave until I vanished. Then I became the woman who took it all back." Not with rage. Not with fire. But with silence. With truth. With the kind of strength they never saw coming. The next day, I finalized the donation. A portion of the house sale went directly to a foundation that helps women start over. Those who were dismissed, discarded, underestimated. Just like I was. They called to thank me. But I didn't need thanks. Because every time I stepped into that bookstore, into the next chapter, I remembered who I was now. Not Ethan's mother. Not Olivia's maid. Margaret Walker. Woman. Survivor. Author of her own ending. I never needed permission to start again. Just a key. And now, I held it in my hand. And this time, it didn't open someone else's door. It opened mine. Outro voiceover. Thanks for listening. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to subscribe. And if you've ever had to reclaim your voice, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.